Hull, open three. Oh, what a sight for Alexi Hull. She has needed that one to drop.
What happens when the Indiana Fever step on the floor without Caitlin Clark and still torch their opponent? Last night, we got our answer, and it came in the form of Lexi Hull going absolutely red hot. In a game that was supposed to be about survival without their superstar, the Fever flipped the script and dismantled Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky in dominant fashion. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement. From the opening tip, Indiana's ball movement was crisp, the defense was suffocating, and Hull emerged as the unexpected flamethrower, drilling shots with icy precision. The absence of Clark could have been a built-in excuse. Instead, it became the backdrop for one of the Fever's most cohesive performances of the season. Meanwhile, Chicago never found their rhythm. Angel Reese battled on the glass, but couldn't spark a comeback. Every Sky push was met with an Indiana counterpunch, often from Hull's fearless perimeter shooting. So what does this game tell us about the Fever's depth, about their ability to adapt under pressure, and maybe most importantly, about Lexi Hull's potential as a real offensive weapon? Let's break it all down.
We're back home, baby, let's go! Back in the W column. That's a big job, baby. Point guard.
No Caitlin Clark. No problem. Not so fast. For all the excitement surrounding Indiana's roster this season, the numbers tell a sobering story when their generational rookie isn't on the court. With Clark in the lineup, the Fever's offense hums at a respectable clip, averaging 82.4 points per game and pushing the pace with her pinpoint passing. Without her, that figure nosedives to 74.1 points per game, a stark reminder of how much she drives their tempo and spacing. The drop-off in assists is even more glaring, from 20.2 per game with Clark to just 15.7 without her. It's not just a star player missing, it's the primary playmaker, the engine that sets the whole machine in motion. Head coach Stephanie White didn't sugarcoat it before tip-off. "We knew we had to find production elsewhere," she said, locking eyes with the media in a way that made it clear she wasn't just looking for effort, she was demanding execution. Adding to the challenge, Indiana entered this matchup carrying the baggage of recent history. The Chicago Sky, led by the relentless Angel Reese, had found ways to bully the Fever in prior meetings. Whether it was crashing the boards, controlling the paint, or forcing Indiana into ugly shooting nights, the Sky had held the psychological edge. Reese herself had been on a tear, stringing together a double-double streak that was equal parts dominance and consistency. Against the Fever, her physical style had proven especially punishing, drawing fouls, securing second chance points, and wearing down their front court. That's what made this game such a daunting assignment for Indiana.
This means you don't have any healthy point guards and you're not able to sign anyone for tonight's game. Just for tonight specifically, what is your plan kind of running point?
We'll have to do it by committee, certainly. I mean, we've been utilizing AB to initiate offense throughout the course of the season, so we'll use her, continue to use her. Sophie, at times this season, particularly early, ran some of the point for us as well. So we'll utilize her and Kelsey can initiate offense too. So I think the most important thing is that we aren't going to be able to do every play in our arsenal. We'll have to play a big lineup. We'll have to simplify. But we've got players who are capable of getting us into offense, and we'll utilize them in such a way.
The Sky's defensive identity was well established. Aggressive help rotations, active hands in passing lanes, and a front line anchored by Reese's rebounding instincts. Coming in, Chicago was allowing just 77.8 points per game, ranking among the league's top defensive units. The visual contrast couldn't have been starker. On the pregame broadcast, analysts rolled a side-by-side graphic that told the whole story in seconds. Without Caitlin Clark, points per game, 74.1 assists. Per game, 15.7. FG percent, 40.2%. Chicago Sky. Defensive ratings, last 5 games. Points allowed, 76.0. Opponent. FG percent, 41.0%. Defensive rebounds per game, 29.8. When you put those together, the implication was clear. Indiana wasn't just playing shorthanded. They were walking straight into a stylistic mismatch, and yet there was a subtle shift in the Fever's body language during warm-ups. No one was sulking. Lexi Hull was already in a shooting rhythm before the national anthem, knocking down corner threes with the kind of bounce in her step that hinted at confidence, not caution. Nalissa Smith was vocal, huddling teammates and gesturing emphatically toward the paint as if to say, "We're going to own this space tonight." Coach White's adjustment started before the ball was even tipped. Without Clark's elite vision, the Fever's half-court sets would have to be sharper, built on constant movement and quick decision-making. Expect fewer high pick-and-rolls designed for the deep pull-up, more off-ball screening to free shooters and open driving lanes. Defensively, the plan was just as deliberate. Swarm Reese early, deny her easy post entries, and make the Sky's secondary scorers beat them. The stakes were bigger than just one regular season game. For Indiana, this was about proving they could win without their franchise cornerstone. A test of resilience, depth, and identity. For Chicago, it was about maintaining their dominance and letting Reese's streak send another message to the rest of the league. Everything about the setup screamed trap game for the Fever, the kind where a shorthanded team hangs close early but eventually gets ground down by a deeper, more physical opponent. But basketball isn't played on paper. And in the WNBA, the margins between victory and defeat are often measured in moments. A hot shooting stretch, a timely defensive stand, a bench player catching fire. As tip-off approached, the tension was as much about the unknown as it was about the numbers. Could Indiana manufacture enough offense to hang around? Could they keep Reese off the glass? Would anyone, step into the scoring void left by Clark? The answer, as we now know, would come fast, and it would come from a source Chicago didn't see coming. The Fever didn't just need someone to fill Caitlin Clark's shoes, and they needed someone to light a fire. Enter Lexi Hull. Her first spark came barely 4 minutes into the game. Indiana had swung the ball around the perimeter twice, probing for a gap. Nalissa Smith faked a handoff, drew a help defender, and kicked to the right corner. Hull was there, feet set, eyes locked. The release was pure. The net barely moved. Over the highlight, the broadcast narrator didn't miss a beat. This was the moment the Sky learned Hull wasn't just a role player tonight. It wasn't just her shooting. Hull brought an edge on defense that changed the game's tone. She hounded Chicago's guards on every possession, cutting off drives and forcing them into bad angles. The stat sheet tells part of the story. 3 steals, multiple deflections, and countless moments where her pressure disrupted the Sky's rhythm, but the real turning point came when she turned defense into offense. Midway through the second quarter, she jumped a passing lane, poked the ball free, and raced the length of the court for a smooth, fast break layup. Cue the slow-mo replay in the commentator's voice. She turned defense into offense, just like this. By the third quarter, the Sky had adjusted their coverage to chase her off the arc, but that's when Hull showed another dimension to her game. With 4:02 left in the third, she hit a tough pull-up jumper from the elbow. On the very next possession, she stripped Dana Evans clean and finished another layup. The Fever crowd could feel it. Hull was in takeover mode. Then came the dagger stretch. Over the next minute, she drilled a top-of-the-key 3 in transition, forcing Chicago to burn a timeout. That capped her personal 8-0 run, a burst that blew the game open. Cameras caught the Sky bench during the break. Slumped shoulders, eyes scanning the scoreboard, head coach trying to regroup, but it was clear they had no immediate answer. Hull's confidence fed into every possession. She wasn't just spotting up, she was directing traffic, waving teammates into motion, and hunting her shot with purpose. On defense, she continued to chase over screens, denying Sky shooters clean looks, and making even routine passes feel risky. Chicago's offense, already struggling without their preferred paces, now had to work through an energized defender who was dictating matchups. Her impact rippled through the rest of the Fever roster, with Hull stretching the floor and punishing over help. Players like Smith and Boston found cleaner lanes inside. The ball moved faster, the spacing improved, and the Sky's defensive rotations began to lag just enough for Indiana to keep capitalizing. By the end of the third quarter, Hull had 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals. The kind of all-around stat line that doesn't just pop on paper, but tells a story of complete control on both ends. Her energy was infectious. Every made basket had teammates jumping off the bench, and every defensive stop came with a fist pump or a roar from the crowd. When the fourth quarter began, the Fever already had a double-digit lead. Hull's breakout had flipped the game's script entirely, turning what could have been a grinded-out, low-scoring battle into an emphatic, high-energy statement win in the making. This wasn't just a hot shooting night, it was a player recognizing the moment, seizing it, and redefining how the opposition, and maybe even her own team, sees her role. And by the time the final buzzer sounded, one thing was clear. Lexi Hull wasn't filling in for Caitlin Clark. She was starring in her own story. Angel Reese got her double-double, but at what cost? On paper, 12 points and 14 rebounds looks like another solid outing for the rookie phenom, but the deeper numbers and the game's flow tell a different story. The Fever threw a mix of quick double teams at her from the opening quarter, forcing her into 5 turnovers, most of them coming when she tried to muscle through traffic or make hurried outlet passes. Indiana's weak side help defenders weren't just collapsing, they were anticipating, reading her spins, and getting hands in passing lanes. The result, Reese's production on the glass didn't translate into momentum. Every time she fought for an offensive board, Indiana swarmed to reset and deny second chance points. For a player who thrives on rhythm and physical dominance, it was death by disruption. And perhaps most telling, her frustration began to show, subtle but visible, in her body language after each wasted possession. Then there was the coaching blunder that became the night's defining what if. Early in the game, the Sky played Hull's perimeter shooting loosely, rotating late and leaving her with clean looks from the corner and top of the arc. By halftime, she'd already made them pay, and yet Chicago's defensive adjustment was sluggish. They began closing harder in the third quarter, but by then, Hull was in rhythm, comfortable enough to attack off the dribble or cut back door. It's the classic defensive conundrum. Do you stick to your original game plan or overcorrect to stop the hot hand? The Sky seemed caught in between. Early help came late, switches were inconsistent, and communication on the perimeter lagged. Compare her first quarter corner 3, wide open, no closeout within 6 feet, to the third quarter's contested pull-up jumper over 2 defenders. The difference in shot quality was huge, but Hull's confidence by then made both equally dangerous. And while Hull's explosion was a dagger, the Sky's offensive stagnation kept twisting the knife. Dana Evans struggled to penetrate without coughing up the ball. Marina Mabrey couldn't buy a 3, and Chicago's spacing shrank as Indiana's defense sagged into the paint. The Sky's response to the Fever's runs was too often isolation heavy, with possessions ending in forced mid-range shots rather than ball movement. Then came the game's most controversial moment, one that lit up social media and had the broadcast booth buzzing. Midway through the fourth quarter, with the Sky trying to mount a comeback, Reese set a screen near the top of the key. As she pivoted to roll, she made contact with Christy Wallace, sending the Fever guard sprawling. The whistle blew. Offensive foul, Angel Reese. The arena erupted. Reese threw up her hands in disbelief, pleading her case. On the replay, angles told different stories. From one side, it looked like a clean pivot with incidental contact. From another, her elbow extended just enough to make it a clear infraction. The broadcasters leaned into the drama. That's a tough call in this moment, one said, emphasizing the timing. Down 11 with 4:37 left, every possession precious. His partner was more blunt. By the letter of the law, that's an offensive foul. But you can understand why Reese is upset. Whether justified or not, the call drained what little momentum Chicago had left. On the ensuing possession, Hull sank another jumper, pushing the lead to 13 and prompting visible deflation on the Sky bench. That sequence, foul, frustration, immediate Indiana score, felt like the final nail. From there, Chicago's offense unraveled completely. Forced threes clanged off the rim, defensive rotations grew slower, and the Fever controlled the clock with smart, patient sets. Reese still battled for rebounds, but each one was met with swarming defenders and minimal payoff. In the end, the Sky's collapse wasn't just about one player's struggles or one bad call. It was the cumulative effect of tactical hesitation, failure to adapt quickly enough, and letting a role player, at least by reputation, dictate the game's outcome. Chicago had the scouting report. They knew Clark was out. They knew Indiana's offense would have to find new scoring channels, and they had a defense capable of choking off those options. But on this night, they allowed Lexi Hull to seize the moment, and they never found the adjustments or the poise to take it back. The scoreboard read Indiana 85, Chicago 72. The story read something else entirely, a missed opportunity, a breakout performance from an unlikely hero, and a reminder that in the WNBA, hesitation kills. The Fever proved they're more than Caitlin Clark. For weeks, the narrative around Indiana has been laser-focused on their rookie phenom, and understandably so. Clark's scoring, vision, and gravitational pull on defenses have been central to every Fever game plan. But this win over Chicago, without Clark in uniform, was more than a blip. It was a proof of concept. In the standings, it matters. The Fever entered the game sitting just outside the playoff picture, tangled in a cluster of teams fighting for the final postseason spots. A statement win like this, against a conference rival also in the mix, doesn't just pad the win column, it tilts the tiebreaker math and shifts momentum in their favor. In a league where just a couple of games can be the difference between home court advantage and an early exit, stealing one without your best player is huge. It also sends a psychological message to future opponents. Even if Clark has an off night or is sidelined entirely, Indiana can still punch above its perceived weight. That's a dangerous signal to send in August, with playoff basketball looming. And then there's Lexi Hull. Is Hull the X factor Indiana's been missing? Nights like this suggest she just might be. Every playoff team needs an unsung hero. Someone who doesn't carry star billing, but can change a game with timely scoring or game-changing hustle. In the WNBA, those players have names that pop up every postseason. Aliyah Copper's finals MVP run in 2021, Shea Petty's clutch shots for Phoenix, even Alicia Clark's perimeter defense fueling Seattle's title pushes. Hull's breakout against the Sky had that same blueprint, an energy surge that shifted momentum, a willingness to take and make big shots, and a defensive presence that forced the opponent out of their comfort zone. The challenge now is consistency. One explosive performance is memorable. Stringing together several makes you indispensable. For Hull, this game could serve as a confidence anchor, the proof she can shoulder more responsibility. It also forces opposing coaches to account for her in scouting reports, which in turn could open more space for Indiana's primary scorers when Clark returns. That's the cascading benefit of a breakout game. It changes how the chessboard looks, not just for one night, but for the rest of the season. On the flip side, the Sky walk away from this game with a very different kind of takeaway, and it's not one they'll enjoy reviewing in the film room. If Chicago can't stop a Clarkless Fever, what happens in the playoffs? That's the uncomfortable question they have to face. The Sky's defensive identity has been a source of pride, particularly with Angel Reese anchoring the glass and their guards applying pressure on the perimeter. But allowing 85 points to a team missing its best shot creator raises red flags. It's not just about giving up the points, it's about how they were given up. The Sky allowed an opponent to dictate tempo, spread the floor, and repeatedly find an open shooter who was clearly in rhythm. That suggests a breakdown not just in scheme, but in on-court communication and adaptability. In playoff basketball, the margin for error shrinks dramatically. One hot hand can swing a series. If Chicago couldn't corral Hull in a regular season setting, what happens when they're facing all-star guards in a best of three? Worse yet, what if they face Indiana in a play-in scenario with Clark back in the mix? The bigger worry is that the Sky's offensive flaws get magnified when their defense slips. Without generating stops, they can't get into their preferred transition game. And when the half-court offenses becomes the default, it leans heavily on Reese's rebounding and individual shot creation, both of which Indiana managed to neutralize in key moments. From a coaching perspective, this loss is a wake-up call. Opponents will watch the film and see that the Sky hesitated to make adjustments when a role player got hot. They'll see that double-teaming Reese at the right times can stall Chicago's scoring flow. They'll see that a disciplined, well-spaced offense can drag the Sky's defense into mismatches. For Indiana, the implications are brighter. This was the kind of win that can recalibrate a locker room's belief system. It validated Stephanie White's message about finding production elsewhere and proved that the Fever's roster has more than one gear. If Clark returns to a team that's grown more confident in its secondary scorers, the ceiling rises immediately. It also redefines how other teams prepare for the Fever. Before, defensive game plans could tilt almost entirely toward limiting Clark. Now they have to consider Hull's perimeter shooting, Nalissa Smith's inside-out game, and the defensive intensity that Indiana brought against Chicago. That's more variables for opponents to juggle, and more opportunities for the Fever to exploit mismatches. Playoff basketball is about moments, but it's also about the build-up to those moments. This game might not define Indiana's season on its own, but it adds a chapter to the story they're writing, one where resilience and adaptability are as much a part of their identity as Clark's highlight passes. The Sky, meanwhile, have to decide whether this loss is just a blip or a warning sign. The regular season still offers time to tighten rotations, sharpen defensive execution, and figure out secondary scoring options. But if they stumble into the postseason without fixing these issues, they risk becoming the kind of team that flames out early, talented, but unable to adjust when the script goes sideways. One night in mid-August might not seem like a turning point, but for both teams, the implications linger. For Indiana, it's a step toward proving they belong in the playoff conversation, with or without Caitlin Clark. For Chicago, it's a reminder that reputations don't win games. Execution does. And on this night, the Fever owned both. The Fever didn't just beat the Sky. They sent a message, and Lexi Hull, she's got the league on notice. This wasn't one of those, well, the other team had an off night situations. This was Indiana walking into a game without their superstar, facing a team that's had their number in recent history and flat out taking control. It was disciplined, it was aggressive, it was smart basketball, and it was fueled by a player most casual fans might have penciled in as a role piece, suddenly turning into the engine that drove the win. Hull's performance wasn't just about the 20 points, the steals, or the timely buckets. It was about how she read the game, sensing when Chicago was slow to close, exploiting angles in transition, and refusing to disappear when the Sky adjusted. That's the kind of court presence you don't usually see from someone not used to carrying an offensive load. And when you mix that with her defensive grit, you start to understand why this game felt different. Think about what this means for the league. If Indiana can find this kind of production from Hull alongside a healthy Caitlin Clark, Nalissa Smith, and Aliyah Boston, their playoff push becomes a lot more dangerous. Suddenly, they're not just a Caitlin Clark team, they're a multi-pronged attack that can punish you from the perimeter, the post, and in transition. That's a nightmare for defenses that already struggle to keep pace with Clark's playmaking. And if you're Chicago, you've got to be honest about what just happened. This wasn't just a loss. It was a game where a role player dictated terms, and the adjustments came too late to matter. In a postseason series, those mistakes cost you everything. Reese's double-double was solid on paper, but the turnovers, the struggles against double teams, and the frustration boiling over at key moments are the kind of cracks opponents will target. Which brings us to the debate hook. So was this a fluke or a sign of things to come? Maybe you think Hull caught lightning in a bottle, a hot shooting night combined with Chicago's slow defensive rotations. Or maybe you see the makings of something sustainable, a player growing into a bigger role, a team discovering new layers to its offense, and a coach finding combinations that work under pressure. The beauty of the WNBA right now is that moments like this can reshape the landscape fast. In a tight playoff race, one win can vault you up the standings, shift the conversation, and give a locker room the confidence it needs to play above expectations. The Fever just got that kind of win. The question is, can they keep building on it? Hull's got the attention now. That means the scouting reports change. Defenders will close harder. Opponents will test whether she can make the same plays with less space and more physicality. And we'll find out quickly if this was just the beginning of her impact, or if Chicago caught the full brunt of a one-off explosion. Either way, you can't deny the impact this game had on the narrative. Hull's name is in the conversation. Indiana's depth is in the conversation, and Chicago's vulnerabilities are very much in the conversation. So here's where you come in. I want to hear it from you. Was this just the stars aligning for one special night, or are we looking at the birth of Indiana's true X factor? Does this change how you see the Fever's playoff chances? And if you're a Sky fan, how worried are you about what this says heading into the postseason? Drop your takes below. Don't hold back. The comment section is where the real debates happen, and I'll be checking in to see what you all think. And if you love this breakdown, or even if you're just here because you can't believe the Sky let this happen, smash that like button if you think Hull deserves MVP chance for this one. Subscribe for more WNBA deep dives, game breakdowns, and player spotlights, and make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss our next analysis. Because if this game taught us anything, it's that in the WNBA, the script can flip in an instant, and you're going to want to be here when it happens.